Hello, hello, hello. Happy Saturday. Oh, I hope everyone is having a fantastic week. My week had a week, but we have coffee, we have caffeine, and we have a fun project planned. So today we are working on the Brookie Bear, which is a memory bear pattern by Make a Memory Bear. She's on YouTube. I did link both her video, her instructional video, as well as her pattern on Etsy. So if you haven't bought it already to check it out, go ahead. So I like to give my first thoughts. So I actually have several patterns from her, and I think she's fantastic. As far as I recall from her story, she started making memory bear patterns because when she was trying to make a memory bear, the commercial patterns that were out there weren't easy for beginners to follow along. So she started making her own. That's the condensed version. You can definitely check out her video to get the whole story. She's super sweet. But she makes different patterns, so they have different levels of abilities. So if you're a beginner, there's different patterns on there. This one is called the Brookie Bear. It is a little bit of a smaller bear, but this bear is really good for if you're using like baby clothes because the pieces are smaller, of course. So you don't have to use quite as many clothes, or it's good if you have limited amount of clothing. Like if you have, a grandparent that passes away and they have like 15 grandkids, you can get more bears out of the clothing because they are just a touch smaller, not much, but they're still super cute. So I got everything cut, and then I put everything with the pattern piece here. But her instructions are really good. Her patterns are really good, easy to follow. Now I've made like a bajillion D memory bears, so I really only put the things on so they're easier for like when I'm talking and not paying attention to like everything the way that I should. so um, So we have everything ready and we're going to go ahead. I have my Singer heavy duty machine. I did go ahead and link, I believe, all my supplies and tools in the description. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. But we can go ahead and get started. So I like to start with the head usually. I don't know why, I just do. So we got, this is the face and the snout. So we are going to put those together because they are done on the fold. So this is the biggest piece of the whole pattern. So what I had to do was I had to use the back side of the baby jumper to get this to fit. And it did not fit on the smaller. I had 3 jumpers. It did not fit on the smaller of the 3 jumpers. So if you have to, you can, because it comes in this piece here. So if you have to, you can do 2 pieces and sew them together. But if you're going to do that, make sure you add for a seam allowance on this edge. So when you put them together, they'll be the right size. So especially if you're doing baby jumpers, they are smaller, but they are so cute. So this is the face and this is the snout. I draw my center lines on them so I know exactly how to match them up when I'm going to pin them. I am definitely a clip girly when it comes to sewing a lot of things, but when it's sewing bears, I like using pins because there are a lot of curves and turns. So I like to make sure that I can get them in there very close together. And I will tell you now, in case this is going to trigger you, I sew over my pins, especially on these curved areas that require a lot to hold it in place. I do it. You can be mad about it. It's okay. I put in some little baby relief cuts here around the curved part of the snout because you can see how the shapes are. We're going to have to pull it around to fit. You only do just very tiny relief cuts, so maybe about 1/8 of an inch. You have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. If you have to, you can draw the line on there, but otherwise, I don't know if you can, let's see if we can see it. See, they're just very small. It just helps it to lay flatter around the curve. I just use my snippers so that I don't cut in too deep. You can use scissors, but just make sure that you're just clipping the edge to make sure that it's going to curve around that snout piece nicely. But I always start my pinning in the center, and then I pin away. And there's no rule on how many pins that you can or have to use. Go with your gut. If you need extra, use them. Nobody's going to judge you for it. Nobody is there to watch you anyway. So, well, maybe there's somebody there. But we're going to just pin. All of my pieces are interfaced. First of all, I like to interface all my memory bears unless it's if I'm using leather or a really heavy, like heavy denim. Sometimes I'll still use a light interfacing on a heavy denim. It just depends if it's fraying a lot, if it has any, if it's a stretchy denim. Usually if they're heavy, they're, a 100% cotton, but not always. So we're just going to pin the bejeebus out of this. But I've been getting asked about memory bears a lot and how to make them and how to find patterns. And there's so many patterns. So how to pick out the right one for you. Because there's some very nice patterns that are not beginner friendly, or they just require extra attention to detail if you are not someone who wants to do a more tedious project. Maybe you just want something you can cuddle on. So there's a lot of different levels for what to do. Just having a struggle bus moment there. I used a medium weight interfacing, which is my favorite to use for a lot of these, but the material is a jersey knit. It is a little stretchy on this one. So this one definitely needed interfacing, because anything that's going to be stretchy, anything that's going to fray really easily, those should absolutely be interfaced. Otherwise, it is a personal preference. I always like to do it just because it's going to help make sure everything maintains shape, especially with these curves here, because this is on the curves is what you're going to be called the bias. So it can get stretchier there, and it can actually stretch things out of shape, especially like once you're stuffing them and you're putting pressure on it by filling it with stuffing. It can push things out of shape and make it look a little funky. So stay stitching can help with that too if you don't want to use interfacing. Like if something's already kind of heavy enough but you're still worried about the shape, then you can stay stitch around the edges just so that everything kind of stays in place before you sew it together. There are different ways to accomplish your look without doing the same steps as everybody else. We all have our own methods here. Anyway, just kind of rambling because I'm trying to not notice my fingers don't want to work this morning. All right. So we are going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I use a pretty tight stitch for plush animals. And then you always want to make sure that you're maneuvering the fabrics so that to try to reduce any wrinkles or pleats, which is why I sew over my pins, because it is holding these in place. So I don't have to try to shift it around too badly. But it just holds everything where it should be. And then all I got to do is worry about any bunching that can happen through the movement. So is it always perfect? No, it's not. But It helps. That's my way of doing it. If you prefer to do it a different way, by all means, you do you, boo. Okay. We all have our own different ways, and I'm not one to tell someone they're doing something wrong just because it's not the same way I do it. So, here we go. There. So we got the little muzzle sewn in. All right. Oh, trim this down. Then we're going to sew the bottom. So this is like the little chin here. Make sure your seams line up from the muzzle there. And I always pin at my seam joint first. So that way, if anything else is off, the seams still match. So, okay. So my fabric has different colors. So I am using a light gray thread. See? Okay. So here's the front of the face. So her instructions call for a safety nose. I'm not going to use a safety nose because this one is actually for a customer and they want a felt nose. We will use safety eyes though, but you would put the safety nose just above this seam line if you were going to do one. Like I said, I'm doing a felt nose, so that'll get covered up before it goes home. And I was able to get it centered so it says I love you right across the snout. Isn't that adorable? I was very proud of my lineup for that moment. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and get the ears going because that's going to go on the face next. And we've got pink for the front and the I love you for the back. And we did get the whole I love you isn't going to show, but I was able to get the love fairly centered. I think, I don't know if it's like going to be perfect, but it's going to be on both of them. It's going to look adorable. It's fine. All right. So we'll do both of them and make sure that your notches line up because we do have to do a little pivot in the head. So you want to make sure that your notches are on there. Okay. All right, and then we are going to trim around the ears. You want to trim down about 1/8 of an inch. This is just going to make them lay a little nicer when we turn them. in just a moment. Okay, not the opening, just around the edges here. And I didn't bring my little trash can over, so I'll just have to make it work. Okay. Then we'll turn them right side out. See, so we got the love on there, pretty cute. So this is going to be the front. Okay, it's pink. It's like showing up more white on there, but it is, there we go. It is pretty pink, and then that's going to be the back. And then, so this is going to be a personal preference. You can either stuff your ears or not stuff your ears. They are interfaced. These ones are, so they will stay up pretty stiff if I want to. I will put a tiny bit in just because I don't want it to be too bubbly, but I do want it to have a little bit of body to it. So about a half a cotton ball's worth or so. And this, again, is a personal preference. You can choose to have it in or not have it in. Just make sure that if you're going to put any stuffing in them, to make sure that they're evenly filled. You don't want one to be puffier than the other. And then also, if you don't want to use filling, you just want it to be have a little bit of body to it, but maybe not super stiff. You can use some quilter's batting if you wanted to. You would just sew that in as a layer while you're sewing the ears together. And then so there we go. So now these do not go just flat on the face. Like you'll see a lot of patterns where they just kind of go straight against the top and then stick straight up. These ones are actually going through this little cut here, and then they're going to arch down this way, so they'll be a little curled like this. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to stay stitch them first. She does it a different way where she'll like sew this whole thing and then she'll pull it and and I'm going to stay stitch it first because that's how I feel more comfortable doing it. So I'm just going to line the edge of my ear with my right side. So this is going to be the front side is face down against the edge of the pleat here. I'm going to go till I'm about a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the face. And then I'm going to just put a tiny clip in there so that it will turn a little easier. And then sew it to the top. And this will keep everything held down in place, so when I'm trying to put the front and the back together later, I don't have to fight with it. You can do it the other way where you just put it in and sew it, and then it sticks. Here, I can show you this way. You put it in, and then it sticks up at the end, and then when you open it up to try to sew the front and back together, you can do it that way if you prefer. This is the way that I prefer to do it. But also, I have a lot of experience doing corners between bag making and cushion making. It's just kind of one of the things I do a lot of. So I am most comfortable with that method. So we're going to line the edge of the ear. This is the front, remember. So the front is going to be face down. The edge of it is lined up with the edge of our pleat box here. But now I have to do the back side instead of the front side. Come on. trying to get my scissors in there without cutting the main fabric. Okay, here we go. And then turn. There we go. And now we have both of our ears are basted down. So they will stay exactly where they're supposed to the rest of the time we're sewing. So now I can sew this dart. It's not a pleat, it's a dart. So we'll go ahead and pull this. So now the ear is going to stay, you just pull it and lay it flat like that, and it's going to stay exactly where it's supposed to stay while you're sewing it. So it's not going to shift around on you. The only thing is if you stuff them really tight, sewing them is kind of a pain either way, so just keep that in mind if you choose to stuff your ears. Like I said, I just put a tiny bit in to give it a little bit of body. It is a personal preference. I have a lot that I don't stuff at all because that is not the look that the customer wants. So it really is a personal preference. All right, so this is his face and his cute little curly ears. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the eyes in. She did not mark where the eyes go on this pattern. So we just kind of make that up. And if you make it multiple times, you can absolutely make a mark on your own pattern so that you have it where you want it. And then it'll always be where you want it every time after that. The pattern says 15 millimeter eyes, but I have 14 millimeter. So that's what I'm using. But you can use any size you want. It's just going to kind of change the look depending on what you do. 14 to 15 is not really a big difference. But I like them a little closer to the snout, so we're going to do right about up here. And so I can show you how I'm going to do my eyes. I'm going to make sure that I don't get them too far apart or too close together. So you don't want to cut the fabric necessarily. I'm going to mark this though so that I know where I want it. There we go. Okay. So with woven fabric, it's not quite as big, or knit fabric, it's not quite as big a deal. But if you have woven fabrics, you don't want to really cut the fibers necessarily, because you could get into an issue where if the eyes get pulled on, it can rip the fabric or the weaving can come undone, which means it'll start unweaving around the eyes. So I'm going to fold it in half so that I can push all the way through both sides so they'll be even. I use a knitting needle or an awl and push it through. And what this does usually, if you need a bigger one, start with a small size and then work your way up, but it usually will push fibers aside instead of breaking them. It will break through your interfacing, and that's okay, but there we go. So now they're in even spots. Put that on there and one on this side. But also, if you don't cut the fabric, you just simply poke a hole and move the fibers aside. Pretend you didn't like where the eyes were. You could potentially move those fibers around to make it not look like you put them in the wrong spot or didn't like it. But here's his little face. There we go. Oh, this camera is I have to have my fan on. Sometimes I think when it's on, it has a hard time, and I'm moving, but I think it just has a hard time focusing. And that's probably just my odd thought. Okay, so like I said, if you were going to put a safety nose on, this is when you would do it. It would go right above the seam here. You do not want to poke the seam because if you break those threads, it'll just start undoing the seam. So you want to do right above it. So then the safety nose itself will sit like right over the little poked part here. And I think, let me pull it up here and see what size safety nose. A 20 millimeter safety nose is what she was calling for. Um, so if you want to use a safety nose, and again, you can use any size you want. That's just what she suggests. And even if you listen to her video, she'll tell you this is your bear, do it how you want. Which I wholeheartedly agree with 100%. Like I said, I'm going to use a felt nose, so I will have to sew that on later. So, but we have the face ready, so we're going to move along and we're going to work on the front of the body. So I have it again. We have we're using baby jumpers, so we are going to have a mix of fabrics, but they're super cute fabrics. So if I plotted it out right, we have the I love you is going to be one whole side of the body, and the flower is going to be the other whole side of the body. Even if I got it mixed up, it'll still be cute. But we're just going to sew directly down the center of the front. You can pin or not pin. That is completely up to you. If your fabrics are more stretchy than others and for whatever reason your interfacing isn't sticking right or you just think they're going to shift too much, definitely pin more than you would otherwise. So here is the front. And now we're going to put the face on. And again, we're going to match up the center seams first, because this will make sure that our face lines up. If you want to sew it on a little to the side so he's looking away, you can. Just make sure that you account for that when you're putting the head and the body together. But if you're doing it this way, it will ensure that your face is probably going to be straight. All right. All right. I like to put my pieces away as I finish them so that I don't lose them or just mix them up with anything else. So then we need okay, so this is where I'm going to sway away from her instructions just a little bit. So she does, actually, you know what? Yeah. So no, I'm going to do it her way. We'll do it her way. So you can sew the arms together, stuff them, and then put them on here this way. I'm going to do it her way. There is a different bear that I do it the other way, but we'll do it this way. Okay, so because it fits perfectly. See this? it would just be funny to do it the other way. So this one goes right up against the neckline here, and it should meet this corner here perfectly. Okay. On this seam though, if you're attaching them this way, I do, in my personal opinion, try not to overstitch the edge on this, because if you do and you overstitch just a little too much, your stitches will be seen when you turn it right side out, because the outside stitches won't cover it up when you put the whole body together. So we'll just do it from stitch to stitch. And then, oh, put it on upside down. It's supposed to aim down. Okay, so redo. So it's supposed to go like this. Oh no, I did do it right. Never mind, I did it right. There we go. A lot of the bears I do are jointed, so the arms get put on the bear completely after everything is sewn. So I'm completely overthinking. Okay. So there we go. We have 2 arms. Now we're going to put some legs on. So this is the one I had to decide because jumpers are kind of small. We have 2 different patterns for the legs. But the way the jumpers are laid out, we have the arms are both the same on both sides. So I'm going to use the strawberry owl pattern. That's the same as the arms. I think I'm going to use on the fronts so this will be the inside of the leg on both, because I could do it where I have one whole leg is each pattern, or I can split it so each leg has half the pattern, or is like half and half. We will do half and half. Sometimes you get to pick, a lot of the elements of the bear, and sometimes the material you have available picks for you. So then we're going to do, and you want to make sure when you're doing it that the toe is pointed up, so when you put it back out, your feet are facing up and not down. Okay. This is a pretty cutie little pattern. It's the first time I'm making this Brookie Bear specifically. I do have a lot of her other patterns that I have I've altered to make them jointed animals, because that is what we get more requests for, but I use her pattern for several of our base patterns. I do also make some of my own patterns, but hers are so adorable I just had to. Besides, we love to support independent designers over here anyway. I have patterns from designers that I've bought that I've never made. I literally just bought the pattern to support the designer because I liked them as a designer. Yeah, sometimes you do. All right, other leg. I want to say I bought this one like 3 months ago. Yeah, like 3 months ago, I think I bought this one, and it's just been chilling in my pattern folder, and that's it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start on the back of the bear, because this is the whole front right here. So now we're going to do the whole back. So this one, what I like is how this is unique is you do the whole front, and then you sew the whole back, and then you put them together, and then you do the soles of the feet last because they have to be put together. But like I said, if you want to do the arms sewed together and then stitch them on, you can. There are other patterns that we do that for, and it's very popular. It just depends on the way it's going to lay out and the way it's going to sit when it's stuffed. It's a personal preference at this point, because you would just sew them, turn them right side out, stuff them the way you want, making sure not to stuff too much because you still have to sew, and then you would just stitch them on the inside. He's pretty small, so I don't know. And like I said, this is the first time I'm making this one specifically. So if I were to stuff the arms, my only fear is he's so small that when I'm, doing the things to do it right side out, if he's got too much bulk in him, I don't know. I'll have to make another one the other way, but for now, we're just going to do it this way. So here is the back side. Gonna sew up our darts first. Oh, one other caveat. I'm not putting the tail on this bear. She includes it in her pattern. I personally am not putting the tail on there, because we don't generally put tails on our bears. I know it's weird, but we don't, and our customer didn't want it, so we're not doing it. So but if you were going to put the tail on, this is when you would sew the tail, and then you would stuff the tail. Again, making sure to leave room to sew it to the body, and then you would attach it. It gets attached right above the dart is where you would put the tail. Again, I'm not using the tail, but that's where it would go. Or I'm sorry, not the dart, here on this side of the body. Just below where you would leave it open. So if you want to do the tail, that's where the tail goes. This is where you would sew the tail and attach it to the piece so that you can have it ready. I'm not using the tail. Again, personal preference. I think part of the reasoning behind people not wanting the tails is if they plan on having children use them, that's like the one thing they like to pull on. So I don't know why they like to pull the tails. So the center back, you want to go ahead and leave the opening for stuffing and turning. So this is the back center. This is where we're going to leave it open. If you're going to use more pins, I suggest finding a way to mark your opening, either putting in 2 pins right next to each other or putting a couple in sideways so you just know that's where I need to stop. Okay. Then we're going to put, we got to do the head. Let's not forget that. So I got to start putting in the together. Okay, so this is the back. Let's see if I did it right. Oh, I did, look. So it's going to be half pink and then half I love you. Even if it was the other way around, it would still be super cute. It just wasn't really the way I envisioned, but it was right. So we're good to go. Sometimes you get like you have to check them like 2, 3, 4 times, especially since like I said, this was the first time I was making this specific pattern. I really wanted to make sure, so I like checked it so many times. All right, so we're gonna go with the head, and we're gonna stitch the center seam of the head all the way up. I'm gonna put just a couple in here. It is a pretty basic seam, but these are liking to shift on each other a little bit, so. Go. So there's the back of our head and the back of our body. Pin down the center seam first. Okay. There we go. Let me know if this fan is making too much noise for you. I don't know if the mics are picking it up or not, but I'm like old lady hot flashing today, so it's a must. All right, so here's the back of the bear. So now we can go ahead and put our arms and legs on. We'll start with the arms. Make sure they're facing the same direction as the front. And again, it lines up right at the end of where the head meets the body. So we want to make sure we line it up the same on the back as the front. So when we sew them together, they are correct. Okay. We'll do the other side. All right. And you're on. Okay. So we got arms. Now we need legs. So then the pattern piece, so there's no like arrows or hash marks on the back of the body. It just says attach legs here. But where is here? Let me double check. She does have some illustrations in her instructions. Seems a little, I think we attach him right at the, because he is in a sitting position also. So let me just, it says attach legs here, but I don't see like a hash mark or anything. So let's just do this way. And we'll make one. So we're gonna go here. Okay. And then we're gonna transfer it to the same spot on this side. So there we go. Now we know where to put our legs. Because you want the front and the back to line up, so when you're sewing them together, they will fit together. So, but yeah, it just says here, I can show you. It just says attach leg here. So like in my mind, I feel like it should be somewhere, but nope, it really is like half. So I will, here, actually let me mark the pattern piece right now. So there we go. Like I said, this is the first time I'm making this one, so I like to mark up my patterns and make notes as I go. If I notice things or change things, that's the biggest thing. If you make any alterations to a pattern for your own use, make sure you take note of it, because if it's something you don't make often, you may forget, and then you'll wonder why it doesn't look the same. So, or why, like maybe you need to take notes because you're struggling with something. Also, there's different reasons. So definitely, I put them right on the pattern pieces if I'm making notes, because then when I'm making it or when I'm getting ready to even cut it, I'm like, oh yeah. Especially like when I'm trying new patterns, or if I'm hacking patterns for something else, or making my own. I'm usually cut things out like 5 times and notes on each one. All right. So we'll go to this side. And here we go. We'll stitch this guy in. See, look at that. Now his whole body is. So that's the back. Woo! Are you gonna focus? There we go. So here's the back. And now we just take the front and the back and we pin them together. Double check our feet are facing their same directions. Our arms are facing the same directions. So they should line up. And now, because we marked the center of the face, remember when I lined up the center of the snout, I can line up the center of the back of the head. So I line that up with that seam. So I usually first will go around and line up my seams. So my center seams, which is the top and the bottom usually. So the head and then the bottom of the body. And then I go around and I match up all of my meet points. So where the arms and legs are going to meet, where the head and neck, the head is going to meet the body. And that's just going to make sure that things stay lined up. So then when I pin everything else together, it should. Whew. I just bent my pin putting it in. I'm having a day of it, let me tell you. My week has been weeking, and it doesn't sound like it's done yet. That's okay. Okay. So that's the bottom body. Look at that. Can you see that? Ah. All right. So the legs and the arms, when they go, they fold and the seam stays up like this. That's how I do it to get the arms and legs to like stay nice and pretty on their outcome. If you want to do it a different way, you can, but that is how I do it. I just feel like the seams lay flatter that way. If you want to try the open seam deal here, like this, you can. And this one probably wouldn't make that big of a difference, but others where it's like all curved areas, then you have to be very careful because then they won't all line up later. All right. So now we'll do the bottom of this foot. And then the bottom on this side. Just make sure everything stays nice and lined up. Very excited to see this guy turned. Okay. Gonna lay flat. There we go. So sometimes something might look a little off if you like hold it up like I am. But once you get it flat and you get all the material situated, it's actually fine. So don't get intimidated. And if it's not, just adjust. It's okay. It's not that serious. Okay. And up to the arm and the neck. There we go. Cooperate. Okay. the arm. So one of the plus sides I feel to this pattern, I love my jointed bears. I love even my unjointed bears. I love a lot of the bears I make. But one of the things that kind of appeal this pattern to me is I only have one seam that I'm going to have to hand stitch because everything is accessible through the body. A lot of the patterns we do, the arms have to be sewn shut, and oh, just one second, hold on. Hi, sorry. My son's birthday present. So I'm like, oh, I better get it. Thank you. You too. I'm coming. I'm coming. Oh, sorry. Mail came and my son's birthday present was being delivered, so I had to go grab it. Um, Any hootie, what I was saying is I really like that everything's accessible through the back through one hole. So you only have one seam that you have to hand stitch. I don't mind hand stitching. In fact, I find it pretty therapeutic a lot of times. But sometimes, especially when you're doing like memory bears, you're doing different fabrics all the time, a mix of things. So sometimes the hand sewing is a bit of a bear. So it's nice to have something, you only have to do one seam. You don't really have to fight with a lot of it for hand stitching. So that's what's nice about this pattern. It's kind of one of the things that made me go, oh. But especially a lot of people, the people that have been asking me about finding patterns as new sewists or new to making plush animals anyway, that was one of their biggest thing. They're not used to doing the ladder stitch. They're not used to sewing shut. Why is the front of this head smaller than the back? Well, alrighty then. We're gonna have to work that out. There we go. It's not bigger, just the ears were pushing it out. Okay. There we go. Now I have one whole side of him all pinned up, and we're going to go to the other side. And I'm going to start with this arm. Start with the corners that they join. And this neck that is just, there we go. This corner is a bit because it's got the neck and the arm is all joining together, so you really kind of have to pay attention. Okay. And in this part, definitely use as many pins as you think you need. Use them all. Because there's nothing worse than getting halfway around your bear and realizing that your seams are off and things have shifted and they move around. So like I said, I am a clip girly. I like using clips for a lot of things, but when it comes to the bears, I like to use pins, especially since everything is such an odd shape. Clips pull off kind of easy when you're trying to maneuver the fabric around. In my opinion, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know, but the clips can kind of pull off in certain areas. So, and then around these corners, especially if I have to maneuver things around, the pins just stay a lot easier and keep everything in place. I love my clips, but they definitely have a place, you know? All right, and now where the leg meets. This little space in between. And then once you get some practice in, if you're not used to making bears or plushes, then once you get some practice in, you can really fly through these things pretty quick. My normal bears that I make, like I said, they're jointed. They will take me 2.5 to 3 hours on the fast side, and I think the longest it's ever taken me is 5, but that had a lot of pattern placement, and so details are going to make a difference, but it's definitely a labor of love, and they're fun. It's just cute seeing their little faces come out. So, all right. Almost. Oh, I got to do the other half of the head, and then we are good. There we go. Okay, there we are. But this one is turning up quite a bit quicker than my normal memory bear. Part of that is because he's a touch smaller, but the other part is he's not jointed. So I'm not going to have to hand stitch 5 seams shut, because usually it's the arms, the legs, and the back. I'm only going to have to do 1. So it looks like everything is pinned, everything is lining up. So with this one, we are going to do from the heel down the bottom to the other heel. Remember, we're going to leave the foot open because we have to put the sole on. And then we'll go around and do the rest from front toe to front toe. Okay? So we'll start with the bottom portion. Always double checking so you can turn on your angles here. So always just make sure your needle is in the down position. It's easier to move things around without them shifting that way. Double check how your seam allowances are laying as you go around. Okay. Now, if you are someone who needs to work in smaller sections, because this may be intimidating as a whole body, you can just make sure that your corners are meeting up, your seams are meeting up, and kind of like pick your meeting points. I know that's going to sound weird to some people because we just do all the things, but That is one of the things that people have said to me about other things. When you're putting all the bigger parts together, you can work in smaller sections, but you have to make sure that your seams and everything are lining up. So and be careful because the pricks are painful. Move this over here. Okay. Ooh. Make sure the fabric doesn't bunch up underneath, because that'll be a pain in the fuckus later. If you're going to sew over your pins, make sure you're not trying to hot dog fly over them, because then you're asking for trouble. Okay. So when we're going around these tight spots, like with his hands or paws or whatever you want to call them on his arms, don't be afraid to go slow. Slow and steady will get you around that curve a lot easier. It's not a race. Make sure we're moving the head so these pins aren't getting in the way. When I get close to the edges, when I know I have to do a pivot like this, I have no problem hand cranking to make sure that I don't overstitch and miss my spots. That's it. I do need. There we go. What are you doing? Stitching back over the ear. So remember, I did put a little bit of stuffing in the ear, so I just have to make sure that I get in there. So I don't want to like rush over it, because otherwise your presser foot will catch on it, all on the hump. Okay. Do the hump, the hump. All right, there we go. pins out. Whew. There we go. Now pivot. And back around the second arm. Take these out. Even if I sew over them, I will still pull pins out as I go in sections to make sure that I don't poke myself if I don't need to. Alright, and we are almost done with the body, I promise. Just make sure that that stays out. Almost. Just got to go down the front of the toe here. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to do a couple of snips here. I'm going to snip the ankle here. Now when you do this, you want to get it close to the stitches, but don't cut the stitches. So when this turns right side out, that's going to just help this so much more. Because when it's in like this, when it's flipped the other way, it's pulling. So you want to make sure that we have the slits in there. So then we're going to do right here at the leg joints. Again, do not go into the seam. You just want to go up to it. Okay, that one I'm going to need the scissors for. That's a little thick. She a thick one. This side. Any of these inside corners you want to make sure to clip. How did I not get that one? It's just going to help make everything look smoother when you are done. And then my paws, I'm going to trim a little bit on the curved edge. Not too close, but a little bit. So it doesn't bunch. Okay. And then we have to put the soles of the feet in. So what we need to do is we need to snip the edges like we did with the muzzle. Now, if you are newer to plush sewing or you're a little uncomfortable with doing the snips, what you can do is you can use your quilter's ruler and mark a 1/4 inch up all the way along the edge, because that is our seam allowance, just so you know to make sure that you're not clipping too far. Or you can just put a 1/8 inch line, so you just know that you clip right up to that line. That is up to you. I'll just take my little snippers. This is just going to help it ease around the sole of the foot so much easier because it's this shape. So we want to make sure that we can get it to go on there nice and smooth so that we have as little puckering as possible. Puckers tend to happen around the feet quite a bit, especially if you're newer and still learning. There are some patterns, though, that are good for beginners that they don't have the soles. You cut the seam this way, and then there's a pleat, so you cut this way. So there's some shaping to it, but the soles are not put on separate like this. But these ones, the way they're shaped, they are not a perfect circle either. So they're wider on the front towards the toe and narrower on the back towards the heel. So I did mark mine with a little arrow in my little spot. You can mark yours however works best for you. So when I'm pinning the sole of the foot on, this is going to sound like it doesn't make a difference, but for me it does. When I am pinning the sole on, I pin from the leg side because when I am, just a second, I can't talk and pin at the same time apparently. When I am sewing and we're going around in a circle, if I sew with the leg side up, I can see where my fabric needs to be maneuvered so there's no bunching or any extra pleats and all the things. So that is my personal preference. Some people like to do it the other way, and that's fine. But that is how I prefer to do it. It works better for me. So then I match up my, that got missed. I match up my side marks. Okay, so once I have my front and my back and then my side marks, I can just pull it like this. See how it's got the, maybe you can't see it. Okay, well, I don't know if you can see it, but it's spreading out nice around this curve here. So I can just push it so it's laying flat and pin. I do use a lot of pins. I do also sew over my pins for this portion as well because you are holding these into a shape that can come undone very easily without the assistance. So I also try not to push my pins too far, and that isn't going to make sense either. So my pin goes in pretty close to the edge, and then I come up pretty close to it again. So I try to stay pretty close to where the 1/4 inch is, because that way I can push the fabric around nice and easy when I'm stitching. And maybe that doesn't make sense, and maybe it doesn't make a difference, but for me, I feel like it does. If it's not perfect, nobody's going to get upset. They're handmade and they're beautiful and adorable. It just takes practice. So if you are practicing and making memory bears, I highly recommend using, go through your closet and find clothes that you don't wear anymore. Go to the thrift store. Practice on different textures and fabrics, stuff like that, so you know how each one reacts. Old sheets, unless you are a sewist, you probably have a healthy fabric stash then. But I highly recommend practicing on different textures and different fabric weights, because not everything is going to be a button-up shirt. Not everything is going to be just a cute little baby romper. And if you aren't comfortable sewing a certain type of material, then just tell people. Just say, I don't sew, I can't sew with sweaters yet, just tell people. You can only do what you can do. Spandex items, sweaters, those are the ones that I see the most people have restricted on their memory bear list. Why is it bunching up at the toe? And then, of course, like heavy denims and leathers, a lot of people don't have the machines just to handle those materials because they are heavy. I do have the machines, but I also do leather and upholstery work. So that one kind of is a given for me. But so we got the whole little footy done. You can start sewing anywhere you want on the foot. Okay. So as I'm sewing, I'm going slow because this is a little bit of a tighter circle or circular shape, I should say. But I'm also watching to make sure that my fabrics aren't bunching up, that if I need to move or pull, I can. And also, I don't want to go too fast over my pins because that could cause some drama for myself. Clip my starter strings because then they're going to be in the way. Don't mind this huge mess behind me. We're in the middle of a what we like to call, because it's fun, cushion palooza. So we're doing so many patio cushions right now. So they're just kind of stacked up everywhere. There we go. So 1 foot down, and I'm just going to double check, make sure my front is my front, and it is. Then we'll do the other one. Front, okay. Okay, guys, this is the last part before we get to turn it and stuff it. So excited. So we're going to match up our front and back points. Where we already clipped the edges. I snipped both legs at the same time, so. And now like my little side mark. I always get really excited when they're almost done because then I get to flip them and see how they look. To me, it's just really fun to like see how this used to just be fabric. It was they were little baby rompers, and and then cut into little fabric pieces, and now they're going to be something else that will get to be used and treasured and hugged. And so to me, that's pretty amazing. Come on, little foot. Ooh. It's been getting warm here, so lately I was talking about old lady hot flashes earlier. So now every day I go back and forth between wondering if our air conditioning just keeps going in and out or if I'm just having a hot flash moment. I'm the only one that feels how hot it is in here, so it's just a hot flash moment. Alright, and almost, come on. Get in your assigned seat, please. Thank you. Alright, so this one is all pinned up. This is the last bit that we have to do before we can turn him. So, getting excited. All right. All right, here's the moment of truth. Let's turn her inside or right side out. Pray I put these feet in the right way. Okay, so one of the things that I like to use is some forceps to get into these tiny places where the feet are. You don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to mar up the material. If you have something that's really small, this one's not so bad, you can absolutely use like a tube turner to push them in. You do whatever's going to be best for you to get it done so it still looks pretty. And like I said, you don't want to like pull too hard with these because we don't want to damage the fabric or pull anything out of shape or anything. But I like using them because it lets me keep the hole smaller so I don't have to stitch so much of it closed, but also just saves my fingers from having to try to maneuver all these tiny spaces. Woo, you are going to fight me. All right, maybe. This is where a tube turner comes in handy. Do you need one? Absolutely not. Am I going to use one? Yes, I am. And I'm pretty sure it's one of those things that I use it because I have it, not because I need it type of situations, you know, which is perfectly fine. Have one, don't have one. There we go. See? Do you have to do that way? No, you do not. I have very sore, tired fingers, so trying to go in there and do it, and maybe I'm just not doing it right, but it's not happening today. And I'm okay with that. Just make sure you're not like yanking or pushing and ramming things around because you don't want to mess up all the pretty work you just did. They're just to help you, not force things along. Okay, and then the head. Gentle. Now you're going to have to, if you don't know, play around. Like if you have thicker materials, you're going to have to leave your openings bigger, or stiffer materials, stuff like that. So definitely, make sure you're paying attention to how the things move for what you need to do. And oh my gosh, it's so cute. Okay. So you can use a chopstick, the back of a pencil, whatever you need to make sure all your pieces push out. Go ahead. And I know you're going to stuff them, but you can't rely on stuffing alone to push things out. It's always better to have it pushed out neatly and then stuff it. Everything just kind of flows easier, at least in my opinion. Okay. That, and we can double check, make sure there's no holes. We didn't miss any spots. The feet aren't upside down. I don't know why that seems to be my biggest thing, but I have seen, see, they're so cute. Okay. I have seen bears, like when people are listing services online, people that have like sewn the feet on upside down or backwards. So I think I always just get nervous that I don't want that to happen to me. So, all right, so put the rest of my pattern pieces away so I don't get them, because we are going to start stuffing. Stuff this baby up. Okay. All right. So I just use the polyester polyfill. I do have a link for it in the description if you don't have anything local in your area. But always make sure you kind of break it up, because it kind of, see how it's kind of like this? It can get lumpy. Don't try to put in more than you can at a time. Don't get in a rush and just try to cram it all in. And if you need help, this is where a chopstick or the back of the pencil comes in handy. Also, forceps are very nice. Again, if your opening isn't like big enough to fit your whole hand in, forceps are nice. You just grab a pinch and like his arm, and then you just push it in. It's so easy. It does make it nice. It is very, very useful. So I like to stuff the head first. I don't know why. I just do. And then I have a tendency to like stuff a lot of my things very firmly. If you want them to be cuddly, you don't want to put too much stuffing in them, because then they're like pretty hard. But the faces, the heads, I like to kind of pack a little more firm than the body, even if you're going to do more cuddly, because if you have it packed a little more firm, the face will hold its shape. Otherwise, it just kind of can look sad. I'll just say sad. It'll look droopy, and we don't want droopy faces. See how, like, if we just left it, it kind of looks saggy, and we don't want to do that. So it doesn't have to be like hard as a rock, but I do prefer to fill my heads a little more firm to make sure that the shape holds nicely. See, so the ears are curled here a little. They're not flat. If this method in any version intimidates you, sew the dart without the ear and then just put the ear straight on. This is your bear. There's no rules. Nobody's going to come and tell you did it wrong. That is just how the pattern was written, to have it curled, and that was my preference, was to sew it in the way that I did. But if you're not comfortable doing that, or you don't like the look of the little curl in the ear, you just put them, match the markup so they're placed in the right spot, and then just do them straight across. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. There we go. And always make sure that you got stuffing pushed up in the muzzle, the cheeks, because some people think I just shove a bunch in and it'll shift around. It won't. You have to actually guide it where you want it to go. And they hold more than you think. She had said that she needed a 1 pound bag of stuffing, which generally they're sold in a pound. I think you can get some that are smaller. I personally buy 25-pound boxes, so I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure exactly how much is going to go into this. However, when I'm planning out bears, I do plan, like when I'm ordering, I'm like, okay, I have 10 bears. I need to make sure I have 10 pounds. I don't always use all the 10 pounds, but that's just kind of how I do the math to prepare to make them all, because I'd rather have a little extra than not enough. So here's his little head. It's still squishy. It's a little soft. I don't know. I might still put a little more in there. We'll see. Let me check on the back here. And when you're doing this, do not start ramming your chopstick in all tough and willy-nilly, because you are going to hurt yourself. But it will help push the stuffing down into like some different air holes, like where the stuffing isn't quite packed in the way you think it is. It'll help direct it into some tight spaces. Maybe that should do it. All right, there we go. So here's the head. Ooh, look at that, so cute. So I really like the curl in the ear. I like the way that came out. Okay. And look, we got love right in the middle of both the ears. So cute. All right. So then I'm going to do the arms and the legs. And for this, I'm going to use the forceps because I am not fitting my fingers in these arms. They are a little skinny. Again, so if you don't have forceps, if they're not something like if they're not something you're going to use regularly, so you don't want to invest in them, that is fine. Or you can't afford to get them, that's fine also. So just here is something that I used to do when I was first starting out. I would take it and break it up and just put it in the back because I can't get my finger all the way into this arm, right? So I would just put a good amount, not too much, but enough to work with. And then I would use the chopstick, the back of a pencil, and just push it in like this. It takes a little time to, get everything you want, but it works. So don't be intimidated thinking you have to buy all the things before you can start things. You do not. Just make sure you don't put too much in the body to like start with, because then you won't be able to have room to move things around. It'll start to clump together and stuff like that. So it'll just be harder to maneuver into small spaces. Okay, so hands and feet. I pack the ends of the hands a little bit tighter than the rest of the arms. And this has too much in the arm. I was talking and not paying attention. Okay, so the arms, here we go. So I do pack my hands a little tighter again to hold shape, but also it adds just a tiny touch of weight to the end, so the arms aren't going to stick straight out. So, and then you don't want to go all the way to the seam. If you do stuff very lightly, I use 2 fingers, so about this much. And I pack it a little tighter towards the hand, not quite as tight here. That is my personal preference, and that is how I stuff them, so that they are still, you can still move them. They're a little floppier. You can position them while they're sitting. And this isn't hard and fast. You don't have to like get it right at the very first second. You can absolutely play with it before you close it up shut to make sure that you like the way it's stuffed. There is nothing wrong. Like, say you stuff the whole thing, and you're like, you know what, I really want those arms to stick up more. They're sticking up too much. You can pull stuffing out, move it around, do what you need to do. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can reach the legs. Probably not really. Kind of. We're going to do this. All right. And then the feet, I also do the feet a little tighter. And this is purely just to keep shape, and so it just looks pretty and cute and not saggy. So you just go around and you stuff them. That's it, really. So with the legs, so it's going to depend on the bear itself. This one is made to stay in the sitting position. So you can stuff the legs a little tighter throughout. But if you have one that's a little more floppy, the legs need to be able to move. So he's sitting, but his legs move when you pick him up. So he's not, his legs will be more floppy. Those are the ones you want to make sure that you don't stuff the leg, stuff them similar to the arms, where you can stuff them at the bottom, but at the top, you really want to lighten up. It's really going to depend on the bear. For this one, it's made to be in a sitting pattern, in a sitting position. So the legs can be stuffed, pretty decently to the end. Those you don't have to worry about shifting around. But if you do the arms, them puppies are going to stick straight out. But like I said, I like to do the feet a little more firm. The rest of the leg, I'll still do it firm enough, like you're not letting it sit like a puddle, but I like the feet to have their shape. There we go. If you want to put in a weighted pouch, she does have in the directions for a weighted pouch if you would want to. I don't use them. I haven't really ever had anybody request one. I don't do weighted bears specifically, but some people will put in some poly pellets on the bottom just to help them sit nicer. Like sometimes they'll sit easier if they have some weight in the bottom. I personally do not use them. There's nothing against it. I just don't. But if you want to, you'll need to make a pouch, and that's what you'll put in during the stuffing. You'll put it right in the bum so that it'll just weigh it down. So this is how the legs look. So now we can stuff the body, because his legs will be a little up like this, but his arms are floppy enough that we can move them, so they're not going to be reaching for a hug all the time. So when it comes to the body, like I said, I do have a tendency to overstuff because I really pack them in there. Because I do like some different doll stuff. It's a whole thing. So, but your bears usually need to be a little more on the cuddle side. So you have to find this balance of stuffed enough so that the shape holds well. Like you want it to hold the head up without like looking like it's sagging down. You want it to hold its shape so that it's got the belly. You want those things to be there. But you don't want it to be so hard that when they hug it, it's like hugging a rock, right? So just play around with it, and you'll find your balance, find what you like, and the way you want it to be. And then I always like go through and double check the neck here, because even though the head is stuffed and we want the body to be a little softer, check your neck because it will push down. So sometimes you just push a little extra right just in the neck area. You don't have to try to ram it right all the way up into the head, but just make sure your neck area is stuffed well. And then that's just going to hold your head pretty steady. His head won't be all floppy. And like I said, these bears hold so much more stuffing than you think they will. See how he's kind of tipping back just a little? If you put weighted pellets, he'll sit a little more forward. But I like him. I'm going to stuff him a little more. Do his arms need a little more? I kind of I like him. Maybe we'll push a little in there. Just a touch. So this is what I mean, where you can kind of do it and then see what you like, what you don't like. There we go. I like that a little better. And you can always kind of try to shift stuffing. It's not going to move around like Play-Doh or anything, but you can kind of get it to shift slightly one way or another. That guy is not quite as full as the other side. Hold on. And here's the thing, you're going to think that this is all going to like flow together. It's not like putting rice in it where it's going to like shift into all the empty spaces. The stuffing is kind of just going to go where you tell it to, and or not tell it to, where you push it to, and it's kind of sticks to itself, I guess is the best way to explain it. So like I couldn't even like push stuffing from the body into the arm because it was already wrapped within itself in the body from when I was stuffing it in. So I was able to use the forceps to take stuffing and push it into the arm. It's a very when you're first starting out, it could be very confusing to try to explain that. So if you need more clarification or if I just sound crazy, that's fine too. Okay. And you shift, don't forget the bottom. You want to make sure your bottom is nice and fitted there, because otherwise people forget and it'll get extra saggy. Nobody wants a saggy bum. So, there we go. I'm going to put a touch more. I always think if I can, like, if there's a hole for my fingers, like not just me moving, like if you put it in, you pull it out, and there's like a well there from where you were shifting, you probably still need a little more, but there we go. And once we close them up, oh, I think that's perfect. Okay. So we haven't been on quite 2 hours yet. So I will go ahead and stitch him up. I don't usually do my ladder stitching live because usually there's so much more of it to do. But we will go ahead and do this. Okay, so here is what I like to do. I like to pin down the 1/4 inch. And this is just to make sure that I am using the correct seam allowance the whole way through, because once you start pulling, things will start to shift around. So this is my preference. Not everybody does this, and if you don't do it, that's completely fine. This just helps me to keep everything lined up so that I don't have lumpy spots. or it's pulling too tight, or I fall out of seam allowance and then it comes undone later, because that sucks too. All right, so see, so I don't pin the whole thing shut. I just pin the seam allowance under so it stays at the 1/4 inch. I prefer not to do this before I stuff the bear because I will scratch the hell out of my hands, and we aren't doing that here. Not if we don't have to. Okay, and then I personally use a more heavyweight thread. This is actually an upholstery weight thread. It's just the Coates and Clark. Can you see that? Upholstery thread. That's what I use to close my bears up with. It is my personal preference because you don't want to use a thread too thin because then it won't close right. I also prefer to use a curved needle. You do not have to. Any sewing needle will do. I happen to have like 500 different needles, so I do understand that that is not everybody's option. Okay, so we're going to knot the thread. And then I'm going to just use my needle. I like to start my stitch a little bit back. Oh, come on. Into where my original stitches started. So that way nothing's pulling on new fabric and then pulling away from, or new seam area and then pulling away. So it'll actually start, just kind of helps reinforce the opening. Maybe it doesn't and I'm just over paranoid, but it makes me feel better at night. Okay. So you're going to go, so we're starting on the white side. So we have white and we have pink. Okay. So we're on the white side. We're going to go into the pink side directly across. Okay. And up. And you want to come up right at in the seam. You don't want to come up anywhere else because we're going to close everything shut. So now we're going into the white. Okay, so now we're in the opening. So now we have to be careful. I can do wider stitches when it's already in the seam area because you're really just making sure that you have something behind that stitch to anchor it and not cause stress on the opening. So now we're in the opening. So now we have to make sure that our stitches are nice and small. What is going on? Caught on the foot. Okay. So you want to make sure your stitches are very small. You do not want to get, goodness, I got this one all mixed up. Hold on. There we go. All right, so you want to go directly across, not across. And then you want to make sure you want to keep your stitches fairly small. And I know some people's instinct is to have really wide stitches because then you get done faster, but really you can just make it very sloppy that way. So we're going to go straight across. Now, if it's not 100% like absolutely perfect, it's not going to ruin things. Also, there are a couple, when you're very first starting out and you're doing the ladder stitch, sometimes they are a little uneven. Sometimes your stitches are a little too big. It's easy to fix that and you don't have to undo the whole thing. I will show you as soon as I get all the way to the end. So here is something. It's very confusing to learn, but if your fabrics are thicker, you do want wider stitches. I know that sounds very contradictory to what I just said, but you will learn which fabrics need what kind of stitches. Heavier fabrics need bigger stitches. Otherwise, they will pucker too much when you try to pull them. So the ladder stitch makes your stitch mostly invisible. There we go. We're almost there, I promise. It's a little different doing it when I have to do it in front of a camera, because otherwise I can like just hold it and all the things. I'm still new to doing things on camera, so I'm learning how to hold angles and all the things. There we go. And you can like just push your stuffing in and move it around to get it out of your opening, and then you can squish the bear around to make it more even or pretty looking after. Because you want it out of the way while you're stitching. There we go. Okay, you guys are going to ask, why do you find this therapeutic? And when I can sit and do this how I normally do, it is. I normally sit when, well, I'm usually watching videos. And I sit with the bear, like, he moves positions a couple of times, but he just kind of sits a certain awkward way. But I usually do, so my bears, I usually do several at a time. So I sit myself up with a video or a movie or something, because I'm usually closing up several at a time. So I'll get them all sewn, and then I'll be stuffing them and closing them up all at the same time. So you kind of find ways to do things a little more efficiently or comfortably in. Okay. So if you are worried about your stitches being too wide, or if you have any kind of holes or gaps in your stitches, here is something you can do. So here is the back. He's closed up pretty well, but I'm going to show you just in case. So what you can do is, you're up and we are on the pink side. Just go back down. Just the same way you were coming back up. And you're going to be good to go. If your spacing is too wide, kind of try to get your needle in between the spaces, especially like if you have any gaps or anything, any pucker holes. That's it. It works pretty good usually. It takes some practice, But that's all you got to do. That's all I've ever had to do anyway, unless it's like fabric ripping, all the thing, like bad things happening. But you just kind of go back down. Some people like to go both directions anyway, because it gives it extra reinforcement. I just stabbed myself. Gives it extra reinforcement. It just makes sure everything, we all have our own ways and the things that we think work best, and that's what it is. Some fabrics you will have to be a little more delicate with when it comes to doing extra stitching too, but as far as memory bears go, um, in my opinion, usually a lot of them are pretty able to. The only one I've ever had to be extra careful, was when we did some silk ties, and they were like really old, real silk ties. Those ones, those ones took extra attention. All right, so here we go. And then I'm gonna knot my guy. Here we go. And then when you are done, you're going to knot in the way that you want to. I do this little method here where I connect onto one of my stitches and I just pull through a couple of times. That's how I do it. So what you want to do is you want to get your needle in the seam here. I know it's kind of hard, but you want to go into the seam and you want to push your needle so it comes out somewhere else. Right? If you have a long doll's needle, you could push it all the way through the front. I have a curved needle, so it's coming out over here if you can't see it. And you're going to pull, and it'll pull your knot into the seam so you won't see it. And then you want to pull it a little, just, you don't want to like yank on it, but you'll see I don't know if you can see it. See how it's kind of tugging, so you can see it? Okay, so you tug on it slightly. So you snip it up against the edge of the fabric, but since you tugged on it, it's going to pull itself back in so you don't have to worry about the tail coming out. Now what that does is it leaves a tail so you're not cutting too close to the knot, which is good because you want that knot to hold. But also it's hiding the tail within the body of the bear, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so then you're going to just mush it around, get the stuffing kind of where you want it, get things kind of situated, and there you are. We have a whole bear. Look at this little guy. Cute! There we are. And I did succeed in doing the full half pink, half white. So loving this. And our live time was 2 hours, just a hair over 2 hours, but I did stop to check the mail, and I was talking, and it always takes me longer when I'm talking, so I feel like it would be quite a bit less than, because like I said, my jointed bears, they take me about 3 hours, assuming there's no like special extra details that we have to do. So I feel like this one would take a bit less. So I will do another one off camera, probably next week sometime, because now I want to time test it. But for now, he is gorgeous, and I love him. And I am going to put a felt nose on him, because that's what we're doing for him. But even if you don't put a nose on him, he's cute. A lot of my bears don't have noses. Some of them don't even have eyes. They have plain faces. That's personal preference. Depends on the fabric. This fabric, the eyes are adorable. So there we go. Look at that. He is cute. And I love him. And I think the eye placement is perfect. We are good to go. All right. So, I didn't even say it before. This isn't sponsored. She doesn't, I don't get paid for this one. I bought this pattern with my very own money, to use because I really like the designer, and I had requests for some other smaller cuddly bears besides my bigger jointed bears. So I love this one. I really like her and the way she designs, and her videos are very clear. If you want to watch her instructional videos as well, I highly recommend it. Her patterns are on Etsy. I did put the link for this pattern specifically in the description, but check out her shop. All of her patterns are adorable. She has like 4 or 5 different bear types. So if this one seems a little too beyond your skill at the moment, she does have a couple more that are maybe even more beginner friendly. But if you want to get into more like sculpted style bears, this one's a good entry into that, I feel. But yeah, check her stuff out. She's fantastic. This bear is freaking adorable and I love it. But yeah, all my supplies should be in the description as well. YouTube finally let me put description like links in my description, so that's fantastic. But if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any patterns that you want me to try before you pay for them, let me know also. I love trying out new patterns and being the sewing guinea pig. So let me know. Or if there's anything that you're interested in, curious about, hey, go ahead, message me, put it in the comments. I always love to hear that. But yeah, if you enjoyed all my ramblings and my sewing, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. And yeah, so we'll be back. I do the live sew alongs every other Saturday, so not next week, but the week after. I apologize. I don't know what project we're doing, but I have some suggestions in my Instagram that I'm gonna go look at, and we'll see what they say. So everybody have a wonderful Saturday. It was so lovely seeing you again, and I just hope that the sunshine is shining for everybody. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.